You do not need to change your whole life today. You only need to change 1%. That sounds too small to matter. But that is exactly why it works. Most people fail because they try to become a completely different person overnight. They chase motivation, giant goals, extreme routines, and dramatic transformations. Then they quit. But the people who actually change their lives usually do something quieter. They improve so slightly that nobody notices at first. Then one day, the results become impossible to ignore. Welcome to Vital Unknowns. Today, we're breaking down the 1% improvement method, the tiny daily shift that can turn you into someone unrecognizable. The math nobody taught you. Let's start with the equation itself because almost nobody actually does this math, they just repeat the phrase. If you improve by just 1% every day for 1 year, you don't end up 365% better. You end up roughly 37 times better than where you started. That's not a typo. 1 times 1.01, compounded daily for 365 days, equals approximately 37.8. Meanwhile, if you decline by just 1% a day, you don't end the year at negative 365%. You collapse to essentially zero, math out to roughly 0.03, almost nothing left. Same starting point, same tiny daily margin. Two completely different futures, separated by a difference so small most people can't even feel it happening. Think of your habits as a savings account that compounds, except instead of interest, you're depositing or withdrawing skill, discipline, and identity. Most people are looking for the version of themselves that requires a massive deposit, a dramatic transformation, a new identity overnight. But compound growth doesn't work like a jackpot. It works like erosion in reverse. Water doesn't carve the Grand Canyon in one flood. It does it in microscopic increments, repeated over an almost incomprehensible amount of time, until the result looks like it required violence to create. This is why your brain consistently underestimates compounding. Researchers studying judgment and decision-making have repeatedly found that humans are wired to think in straight lines, not curves. We expect tomorrow to look roughly like today, and we expect effort and results to move at the same pace, side by side. But compound growth doesn't move side by side with effort. For a long stretch, it moves almost invisibly beneath the surface. Then, all at once, it breaks through. The flat part nobody warns you about. Here's what almost destroys most people's progress, and what nobody tells you before you start. Before compounding becomes obvious, it goes through something that looks exactly like failure. Picture a graph of exponential growth. For the first stretch, the line looks almost flat. It barely climbs. If you only looked at that section, you'd swear the method doesn't work. This is the exact point where most people quit. Not because the system failed, but because they couldn't see what was happening underneath. Think of bamboo. Certain species of bamboo spend years putting down root systems before any visible stalk breaks the surface. Then, once the roots are established, the plant can shoot up dramatically within weeks. To an outside observer who wasn't watching the whole time, it looks like overnight growth. It isn't. It's years of invisible compounding finally crossing a threshold anyone can see. Your habits work the same way. The first 30 days of a new skill, a new exercise routine, a new way of managing money, they will not feel like 37 times improvement. They'll feel like almost nothing. Your brain, wired for straight-line thinking, will interpret that flatness as proof the method is broken. This is the single biggest reason people abandon good systems in favor of chasing the next big overhaul. They mistake the flat part of the curve for the whole story. Why systems beat goals? So if daily 1% improvements are the engine, what's the steering wheel? This is where most self-improvement advice gets it backwards. It sells you the goal, lose the weight, get the promotion, build the business, and treats the goal as the thing that matters. But a goal is just a snapshot. A system is what actually produces snapshots again and again on autopilot. Consider two people who both want to get healthier. One sets a goal, lose 20 pounds. The other builds a system, walk after dinner every night, prep meals on Sundays, sleep by 11. The person with the goal is motivated until they hit the number. Then what? The system has no finish line because it isn't chasing an outcome, it's running a process that produces the outcome as a side effect. This is precisely why so many people hit a goal and then watch the results slowly reverse. They optimized for the destination, not for the machine that builds destinations. Identity is the multiplier hiding inside this entire equation. Every time you complete a 1% action, you're not just getting marginally better at the task, you're casting a vote for a version of yourself. Skip the workout and you've cast a vote for someone who skips workouts. It's never really about that one missed session. It's about the identity that single choice quietly reinforces. Compound enough of those votes in either direction, and eventually they don't just describe you, they become you. If this is reframing how you think about your own progress, hit like right now. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who are stuck waiting for motivation that's never coming. And drop a comment telling me one tiny 1% habit you're going to start today. I read every single one, and I want to see what you're building. The marginal gains experiment. There's a well-documented example of this principle applied with almost obsessive precision. A national cycling program that spent years stuck without a single major championship win. A new performance director took over and applied one core philosophy. Find every conceivable element of performance, break it down, and improve each one by a tiny margin. Not just training intensity and nutrition, but the aerodynamics of racing suits, the type of pillow riders slept on while traveling, even how they washed their hands to avoid catching colds during competition season. No single change moved the needle in any noticeable way. But stacked together, dozens of 1% improvements compounded into a level of dominance that transformed the program from an also-ran into one of the most decorated cycling operations in modern competitive history within just a few years. That's the part people miss when they hear stories like this. It wasn't one secret breakthrough. There was no single magic intervention you could point to and say, that's the reason. It was the unglamorous accumulation of margins so small that, in isolation, each one looked pointless. This is uncomfortable because it means there is no shortcut to skip toward. The compounding only works if you're willing to do something that, on any single given day, looks completely insignificant. How to actually apply this today? So here's what this actually looks like in practice, stripped of theory. Pick one area of your life, just one, where you want compound growth, your health, your skill set, your finances, your relationships. Then find the smallest possible version of a positive action in that area. Not the workout, the act of putting on your shoes. Not reading the book, the act of opening it to the marked page. The goal isn't to perform a heroic action once. It's to make the action so small that missing it feels more uncomfortable than doing it. Track it, not to judge yourself, but because what gets measured compounds visibly instead of invisibly. A simple checkmark on a calendar is enough. And expect the flat part of the curve. Expect weeks where nothing seems to be changing. That flatness isn't evidence of failure, it's the root system building underground, exactly like the bamboo, exactly like the math. Your future is not built by one massive decision. It is built by repeated votes. One walk, one page, one better meal, one focused hour, one difficult conversation, one small promise kept when nobody is watching. First, nothing seems to happen. That is the dangerous part. That is where most people quit. But beneath the surface, your identity is compounding. Your habits are building roots. Your future self is being formed quietly, one tiny action at a time. If this changed the way you see progress, like this video, subscribe to Vital Unknowns and stay with us, because the next video will show you how to find the 1% habit that changes everything else. Because your life does not change when you feel ready. It changes when your smallest actions start becoming your identity.